All right. The first short story that we are reading in this class is called Hills Like White Elephants. It was published in 1927 by Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway lived from 1899 to 1961, and he is known as one of the greatest American writers of the 20th century. But he wasn't just a short story writer. He wrote novels, essays. He was a memoirist. He was a journalist who had a pretty exciting life as a news reporter. He wrote poetry and he even wrote plays. This is a picture of Ernest Hemingway. Many people thought that he was a pretty handsome man. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954, which is a major accomplishment for a writer. And you might recognize some of the names of these novels. He wrote works like The Sun Also Rises, A Farewell to Arms, and one of his most famous works, which you might have read in high school, is titled The Old Man and the Sea. He was considered really a master of what is called the understated prose style, which became his trademark. And so, just a little bit about his biography. Criticism of Hemingway's work has been colored by this larger than life mythic persona that he owned. He had a reputation as being kind of a robust, belligerent American hero who wanted to not only experience violence, but to write about it as well. Here's a younger Hemingway. He was actually an expert in the arenas of war. He knew about bullfighting, deep sea fishing, boxing, big game hunting, and he lived this reckless, extravagant lifestyle. A lot of the things that he wrote about in his short stories and novels, those adventures, he actually experienced himself in his real life. In terms of where he lived, Hemingway traveled the world. He lived in France, Spain, Italy, and Cuba, and he was a writer that was known around the world and constantly in the public eye. He also had a little bit of a passion for fighting. He got in fistfights and quarrels after he had been drinking, and he was legendary for this. He also knew a lot of Hollywood personalities, but beneath this flamboyance was a man who viewed writing really as a sacred occupation, and he was constantly striving to master the art of writing. He did have 3 failed marriages, and he also suffered from this debilitating addiction to alcohol. And during those times, he produced less literary works. Hemingway was born and raised in Oak Park, Illinois, and his parents were very strict Congregationalists, but he did live a fairly happy upper middle class childhood. Scholars do note, however, that as he grew older, he felt bitter towards both of his parents, in particular his mother, whom he viewed as being selfish and domineering. Hemingway, during the war, worked as a Red Cross ambulance driver in Italy, and that had a tremendous impact on his development as a writer. During the war, he was wounded in both legs by the shrapnel explosion that happened near the front lines. And as he was being treated for this injury, he fell in love with the American nurse who was caring for him, although she did leave him for an older man. After his first marriage in 1921, Hemingway returned to Europe to launch a writing career. And for the next 7 years, Hemingway lived really primarily in France. It was considered the literary capital of the 1920s. So one thing that makes Hemingway famous in literary criticism is this theory that he has called the theory of omission. And he says that, quote, if a writer of prose knows enough about what he is writing about, he may omit things that he knows, and the reader, if the writer is writing truly enough, will have a feeling of those things as though the writer had stated them. The dignity of movement of an iceberg is due to only 1/8 of it being above water. So this theory of omission, which is also known as Hemingway's iceberg technique, is one in which his writing style leaves a lot to the reader's imagination, and it ends up creating this story whose power tends to grow with repeated readings and discussions. So in other words, character in Hemingway's stories will not just come out and directly state things. It's all sort of hidden under the water. But the reader can often very clearly figure out and understand what those characters are talking about from the way that Hemingway writes and from the way that the characters act and the things that they say. So just to give you a preview of what this kind of writing is like, in real life, if you've ever had an experience where something that's said out loud does not match things that are left unsaid, and what is actually meant is different than what's said out loud, then you're going to understand this story. So here's an example. Say that we've got a couple, and this couple is about to break up. The soon-to-be ex says to his or her partner, it's not you, it's me. That's what's said out loud. But there's something under the water here. Something is left unsaid. And what the partner really is saying to his partner or her partner is, I don't love you anymore. The soon-to-be ex means it's not me, it's you. So we're saying out loud, it's not you, it's me, but really we mean the opposite. Lots of us have had experiences like that, where what is said out loud is different than what's actually meant, and a lot of things are left unsaid. Here's another example. Say you've had Thanksgiving dinner and your extended family leaves, and your mom says, your Uncle Frank is such a character. Your mom might leave off or unsaid that there's not a snowball's chance in the Sahara that Uncle Frank is coming to another Thanksgiving. What your mom actually means is maybe that Uncle Frank is a racist horror show. So what is said out loud is much different than what is actually meant and what is not said. So here's why Hemingway wrote this story. Hemingway was infatuated with the fact that humans, despite having mastered the power of language, don't really know how to communicate with each other. So he sketched out this little scene in Hills Like White Elephants where we see a couple dance around what they really want to say to each other instead of just saying what they mean. So this is really a story about communicating or the lack thereof. In Hills Like White Elephants, we get this great portrait of how we talk at, to, and past each other. How we can go on and never quite get at what it is we really want to say. This story is a chance to reflect on the way we talk to our loved ones, and we're not talking about our accents here, and what we might or might not reveal when we do actually start talking. All right, in the next video, we